Longest Japanese intro ever. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are you all doing? It's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And today, I'm going to be sweating like a pig in my Japanese heavy tank. It is the Type 4 Heavy. Now, before I go into depth about how good the Type 4 Heavy is in World of Tanks, let me explain the term sweating like a pig a little bit. Because, obviously, I have called one too many self-propelled guns pigs over my time. Today, you're going to see that an artillery is definitely going to be making me sweat. Stay tuned for that. But the term sweating like a pig isn't actually about a pig that sweats. The term sweating like a pig comes from the iron smelting process. And that is pig iron, where they would have formations of sand, and they'd pour out the iron, the molten iron, onto the sand, and then when it would run through the channels, it would form these ingots, and it looked like little piglets that were being formed in the iron that were connected to a sow, i.e. the main channel that would be forming these pig iron ingots. And the term sweating like a pig would come from when there was like a dew point after the iron had cooled, and you'd start to see moisture form, meaning that the iron was now safe to handle. Now, whether the Type 4 Heavy is a whole bunch of steel that is safe to handle in World of Tanks remains to be seen. Let me tell you, this vehicle is pretty painful. Now, it can be absolutely amazing inside of a nice matchup like this, but trust me, for every game that you get into where you're going to see the Type 4 Heavy doesn't look like the worst tank you're ever going to play in the game, you have a lot of situations where you just have to sit there and frankly take it from tier 9 and tier 10 tanks that are going to be spamming gold rounds against you. I would really not recommend this vehicle. However, for the below average players out there, you might actually find that it can work out because it's a real simple vehicle to play. You basically just stick the front towards your opponents, don't even really have to angle it all that much, and just keep using either the high explosive gun, the derp gun, or using the armor piercing gun, although it's not really fair to call this the armor piercing gun now because Wargaming have actually added armor piercing rounds to the derpy gun, so you can kind of play it like a traditional gun. However, the one that I'm talking about is this 140mm, or 139.7 if we're being pedantic. And this gun has two flavors of ammunition. It has its regular rounds and it's got its premium rounds, which are 290. And unlike the derpy gun's armor-piercing rounds, that 290mm of pen on the premium rounds is actually enough to be able to deal with a lot of vehicles. The derpy gun and the armor-piercing rounds that Wargaming, at least relatively recently, added to make that high-explosive gun more competitive given the high-explosive nerfs to the ammunition type in World of Tanks. I think it's only got about 250 pen, and I can tell you, outside of using funky overmatch angles, it is a painful thing to play. Alright, well, I don't know what this Projetta's quite thinking, but unfortunately for me, they don't completely mess up and drive into our tank. However, luckily for me, the Projetta's going to focus down the Italian auto-loading tank destroyer, and not on the big old slug of hit points that I'm playing with on the Type 4 Heavy. When I play this tank, I like to use a turbo, I believe a durability module, and vents on this vehicle. Although I wouldn't suggest that dropping a gun rammer is a no-brainer on this tank. So this is where the Type 4 Heavy just needs to retreat into the cavern behind, keep its butt safe from its opponents, not allow it to get flanked, and just keep everyone in front. And luckily, because it doesn't look like I have too many vehicles behind me, I don't want to go back too far, otherwise the TVP is going to be able to shoot me. I might even be able to at least die gracefully in this tomb that I've kind of crafted for myself. I'm having to deal with 4 vehicles in front of me, 3 of which are autoloaders. And it's all about just making sure you're focusing down the most important tanks. And I feel like getting rid of that Skoda was probably the most important thing to handle here. Although, as everyone knows, the Type 4 Heavy is just one of those kind of tanks where you just have to basically grit your teeth, lose your hit points, and that's why you've got a lot of hit points to begin with. Having dealt with the Skoda T56, I hang on for long enough, weather the storm from the AMX 1390, who luckily for me is looking like they're using the stock gun and regular ammunition. Although regular ammunition in the stock gun is still going to do 500 damage to the rear of my vehicle if I stay there, so even though I'm literally flooring it, driving along at 12 kilometers an hour doesn't really feel like I'm flooring it. And I managed to avoid now the flanking play by the 1390, who thought they were so clever, but they actually bounce off the rear of my tank, and the Su-130 manages to finish them off. But here it begins. The pig making me sweat, although for a completely different reason in the smelting process. begins their bombardment of my vehicle, stopping me really from being able to fight back efficiently against the Progetto. Although I did use a medkit, so I managed to remove their stun. So in this situation, I didn't really fancy trying to go out this way, because I presumed that the artillery would still be able to hit me. So instead, I kind of want to, once again, get myself into a corner and just try and rock up. And that is because we're down by 2 tanks, we're down by 1,500 hit points as well, and I'm just hoping that this Su-130 PM, who saved me against that pesky Bat-Chatillon 12T, is also going to do the same thing same thing with the Progetto. So there are still a variety of vehicles on the enemy team that might make their way towards our base. I'm just wondering if that Char Future 4 is actually AFK on our team. I haven't seen them move, at least in the last 30 seconds. We'll have to check the post-game stats to see if they managed to do any damage. So the Su-130 PM says, on my way, and I love it. Fantastic. Great stuff there by the Su-130 PM to immediately be communicating, because we are going to have to work together if we want to get through this situation, especially if 1,500 of our hit points are AFK in the form of the Tier 9 autoloading French medium tank. So this is a big moment of this game, and that is that the Progetto 46 messes up, reverses out, and actually got flanked by a Type 4 Heavy, which is quite a hard tank to get surprised by. I'm going to tell my Su-130 PM to fall back here, and I'm racing as quickly as I can to be able to get into position to be able to help them out. The top speed limit of the Type 4 Heavy is actually 25 kilometers an hour, but obviously with a turbo I could go up to 30, but really what holds you back is this vehicle's awful power to weight ratio of 7.9. I had to have a double take there to realize this tank actually has a power to weight ratio that is lower than 8. It actually makes me think that maybe Grousers would be better on this vehicle for a variety of situations instead of using a turbo, because if you can improve the vehicle's poor ground resistances, you're hardly ever getting up to this 30 km an hour top speed limit. Although when you do, it's pretty sweet to be that fast. And also to have the reverse speed going up from 10 up to 13 will be fabulous as well. So unfortunately for me, our shell just misses the CC67, and it doesn't look like that Char Future 4 was actually doing anything this game. Looks like they're AFK, just taking it from the Italian tank destroyer. And that really shows how brutal this endgame situation is here. And wow, shout out to the artillery for escaping that situation and distracting the Type 61 to actually allow the Su-130 PM called Dazuki on my team to finish them off. Now, Dazuki's up to 3 kills, I'm up to 5, but we also have to give massive respect to Radonia in their artillery there, who was able to distract the enemy team to allow us to pick up a kill. That's what you need to do in your self-propelled gun as you're going down. Not give up and blame the team, but try and survive, try and get into position, try and land that extra shell in, and provide the distraction to allow your team to possibly get back into this. Unfortunately, my 600 alpha damage low rolls yet again to do 534, meaning I'm unable to vanquish the Tier 8 Italian tank destroyer, the CC67. I'm just hoping that the Su-130 PM on my team doesn't quite get spotted, but we've also got a full health Stridsvagn S1 to deal with on the enemy team, and whether or not they are AFK still remains to be seen, as they haven't picked up a kill in this battle. And oh dear, Artie just keeps getting me, but that's exactly what he's meant to do. He's doing a great job in leveling the playing field here, but oh dear, we don't have time to talk about leveling the playing field, and that's because a Tier 8 Swedish tank destroyer has just managed to get my side. I stopped momentarily to put a high explosive penetration into the weak point of the S1, and I get lucky that I bounce a gold round from the CC67 there. Obviously, I'm petrified about the enemy artillery, but unfortunately for me, my friend Dazuki finally falls to the CC67. And in this situation, hopefully the artillery doesn't get us. Woo! Wiping the beads of sweat off my brow from that one. I'm actually going to load up another high explosive round here against the S1, thinking that I could probably splash anywhere on their vehicle, but it actually doesn't seem to go through. Luckily for me, however, this is one of the heaviest tanks in the game. I think it's the second heaviest after the Mouse. Actually, probably the Moistion is going to be heavier than this. Maybe the 4th or 5th heaviest after those. And we managed to crush the S1 before they're able to finish off, picking up our 6th kill. So in this situation... yeah, does anyone get really nervous when they hear the artillery shells? We're in a one-shot here. In this situation, you might be thinking, what are you doing driving out into the open? Well, I know how slow this tank is. And I want to play to win. There's no point in me going after the CC-67 because I'll never find the arty. What I have to do is I have to make a beeline towards the enemy base right now. And I managed to ricochet the CC-67 with the rear of my vehicle, and we finished them off with a high explosive round, picking up our 7th kill. But I was already thinking, lucky about that, I'm going to use my repair kit and my med kit because I got to get going towards the enemy base. You've always got to be thinking about how you can win. You shouldn't just focus on the situation that you're in, but also focus on what you need to do to get through the rest of the battle. And for me, I knew that I need to give every single second that I can to being able to get towards the enemy cap circle to be able to actually cap it out. It's not enough to just defend my base and deal with the CC-67. I really care about winning, and draws, but while it's sometimes nice to be able to deny the enemy team the pleasure of winning, to all intents and purposes are just as bad as losses on your record. Nobody goes and takes a look at your win ratio and sees, oh, he's got 60% wins and 3% draws, but this player's got 60% wins but 5% draws. I guess if you were being pedantic and you really wanted to go into great depth, then the player who's losing less would be better by proxy, but nobody's talking about anybody's draws, right? And so I'm always thinking about the next step about how I can win. And so coming down that slope, it wasn't about dealing with the CC-67. That was just one of the steps that I had to make towards winning the battle. It's more about trying to get towards the enemy cap circle to be able, or even just destroy the artillery inside their base, maybe cap to force him to have to come and fight me to be able to win this one. And we'll see this whole conversation that I had with this leopard. The leopard thrilled that we're doing an epic carry in a big fat slow type 4. Yeah, thanks mate, it's definitely making me sweat in this battle, that's for sure. But I think I'm too slow, I'm thinking he'll cap me. I don't think there's anything that I can do is what I say. He says he is still by the cap, I don't think he can make it over in time. Yeah, I think he denies, he didn't realize just how slow this vehicle is. But then when he probably sees me going up slope at 5 kilometers an hour, realizes that this vehicle is incredibly slow. Then the leopard highlights, for all of you out there, that it's 1 minute and 40 seconds to solo cap. That's right, 100 seconds will be 1 minute and 40 seconds. And so that is our goal, to be able to try and get into the cap circle. Can we make it? We have a minute left to be able to get towards the cap circle. The leopard's really trying to micromanage me here, but I just look at that as a sign that he's really excited. Look, I've been there, I've done that, I've made suggestions to players. It's usually because I've just got my heart and soul in the game, and this leopard is exactly like that. But also, I'm very confident in saying negative to him that I'm not going to blind fire those bushes, because the reload of the 20 seconds afterwards might be the time that it allows the artillery to be able to come after me. And firing I don't think would be the most sensible suggestion. So what feels like an eternity since we dealt with the CC-67, now we finally entered the cap circle, and oh god. Yeah, looks like the artillery was doing exactly what I thought. And we've only just managed to get into the cap circle with, I believe, 5.5 seconds left. That should be half a second longer than we need, because if a team caps, it's 5 seconds until the end of the game. And so, to all intents and purposes, I think that I will win as long as I manage to successfully cap. But now I have to endure the mental torment of having an artillery on the enemy team, a rather large splashing tier 9 British artillery firing rounds at me persistently for the rest of the cap duration. We're on 7 kills. We're definitely not going to get a Radley Walters medal here. But even if I can get a win in this slow lumbering Japanese heavy tank, especially when you consider that I'm playing on my plays for free account, an account that I never spend any money on, this would be delicious. So you might wonder, what am I doing here? And that is, firstly, trying to avoid the artillery. But I've loaded a high explosive round. And what my plan is fire into these boxes. The enemy artillery should see that, because it's a high explosive round, and then they are going to shoot the middle of the cap circle, thinking that I have relocated to there and I've foolishly crushed some boxes. And so the artillery, with now only 1 shot left to be able to win the game, surely is going to fire into the middle of the map, and this should be a very stressful but glorious victory for the Type 4 Heavy. Yep, Leopard Prototype summed it up correctly. No. I might have had some choice words here in World of Tanks when I was streaming, when that moment happened. And do you know what? This was last Monday. I started streaming at 9 a.m. in the morning, and this was my first game of the day in what was going to turn into a 12 or 14 or even 15 hour stream. But sometimes in World of Tanks, you got to respect the gamer. You got to respect Angelica6, if that's not an anonymized name on the enemy team, for doing everything right, harassing me throughout the game, realizing that the Type 4 Heavy's probably coming to vanquish them through the middle of the map, and even thinking to get into the cap circle with enough time to be able to win it. And then, well, managing to get the interrupting shot. And unfortunately for me, they obviously didn't take the bait of me shooting the center of this map. In the post-game, I went to Angelica6 and I said, wow, I can even, look, it was at 9:19 in the morning. God, I'm such a no-life streamer. Wow, nice shot in your SPG at the end of the game. GG well played from the Type 4 Heavy. Happy face. Now, whether you think I'm being sarcastic or not, it's up to you. You decide. I genuinely congratulated this artillery because they did everything right. People like this who actually play artillery correctly are assets to your team. They should be praised. And you know what? Even if they're giving it the best on the enemy team, they're just playing World of Tanks too. I've won a few games in artillery over my years, and while I was probably very frustrated at the time, it didn't take me too long at least to realize that that was an incredibly close and exciting game for a terrible tank on my free-to-play account. And sometimes that's what gaming is about, especially in World of Tanks. So this was an ace tanker for my Type 4 Heavy, 894 base experience, which will get an extra 515 from Courageous Resistance. That was a huge round for a big, slow, lumbering Japanese heavy tank that I actually managed to drive 3 kilometers in this vehicle, pretty much holding down my W key throughout most of it. We get a Top Gun for our 7 kills, and we even get a Steel Wall Medal in this defeat for blocking 3,000 damage. And one thing that I was proud of as well is I actually managed to make credits without a premium account in the Type 4 Heavy on my free-to-play account. But don't worry, I'm not pretending to be completely free to play the whole time. It's just really interesting for me, especially in some of my reviews when people say, oh, well, you're just using all of the advantages. Sure, on my main account. But if you want to see me play my free-to-play account more and see that we can still have good results without spending any money on the game, then swing by some of my streams sometimes, especially earlier on in the stream when I still have the will to play my free-to-play account. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it today. This was the game that made me sweat like a pig. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for the World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, I'm going to be featuring the top of the tree, the 60 TP. The Polish heavies are amongst my favorite in the game. And come along and I'll show you why I think that the 60 TP, at least for me, is one of the best heavy tanks you can be able to get your hands on. And I think for a variety of players. So, really looking forward to seeing you all live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.